Welcome to our demonstration of the Urban Forest Metrix software. This demonstration is particularly geared for consulting arborists. They comprise a pretty big part of the folks using Urban Forest Metrix. And they use it for both the back-end part, where they're using it on a computer, keeping track of clients, making proposals, doing large inventory reports, and also the field side, which is this interface over on the left. This you would typically see on a mobile device, an iPad, an iPhone. It can also run on Mac and PC, but typically we see people using a mobile device to do that. And this is what they have with them out in the field when they are touching trees and they're looking at things and diagnosing things. This allows them to walk out and touch their nearest tree icon, and that will allow the mobile device to figure out where it is via its GPS chip and then compare that location to all of the records in the database and pull up the right one. So if I walk out to a tree to which I've been before, I can just click on the nearest tree button, it'll pull up whatever is the nearest record, and then I can enter in a new visit and then enter in any new information. Say I can take some notes, and with a mobile device, I can even use voice notes. I can speak into the device and it will transcribe that into text, so long as that device has internet access. Otherwise, I can type as you normally would. So we'll show first a bit of the back-end interface back on the computer, and that's fairly simple. I can go over to my customers list and choose which one I'm going to be dealing with today. Let's see, we'll go ahead and do Mr. Crash here. And you can see there's lots of information about that client. Various contacts, what role those contacts have. They might be a landscaper, the daughter of an owner, the neighbor who makes sure that you close the gate afterwards once you're on the lawn. All sorts of different scenarios there that this can be quite flexible in allowing you to keep track of that information. We also allow you to mark what sort of pre-notification is necessary for folks who need you to call them before you come to visit a tree, or after you've prescribed some work, that crew needs to make sure that they're talking to someone before they go there. You know, what days are allowed, what times of day, and to which sort of work does those requirements apply. Of course, there's contact information and directions and maps and all that good stuff. But importantly, down here, we see the work lists. Here are leads. These are proposals that have been proposed to the client. They haven't yet been approved. Then we have accepted work, and then we have done work. And there's different ways of divvying that up, and people do that. They have different workflows, but this can conform to whatever your workflow is. So that's what we'll show now on the back end. There's some more features and reports we'll go into later. But once you have determined that there's specific clients to go and visit, you can set up a My Work page, which shows the different places that you need to go that day. And this too is right here is an iPad interface. So I would open my iPad up, it would know which clients are relevant to me, it will have downloaded that client information actually onto my iPad. So I don't need internet access when I'm out there in the field. Then when I am out there in the field, we are now using this interface here where we can go to the particular location. I go ahead and choose that same client. I go to the tree interface, and here I can enter in the new information. Here is the visit from today. I can enter in new notes, update the information. All of these fields are customizable to the particular arborist as well. And also enter pictures. So if this were an iPad, I would just touch that, camera would pop up, I'd click a picture, and it would automatically go into this record. And that's important because that photo doesn't need to be downloaded later and then associated with a tree in a manual way. That picture now exists in this visit associated with this tree, associated with this location. And that's pretty powerful for doing reports later. The most obvious one is an inventory report, and we can show pictures. It's also pretty handy for diagnostics. when you wish to look to see what a tree looked like the year before, to see how a condition is advancing. So if we do want to enter into greater detail in any of these areas, we can jump into these tabs to talk more about the root, trunk, leaves, twigs. It's not that you have to enter in all of this information each time you visit a tree, but rather you enter in the information that's relevant to that visit. And when you have a piece of information that's relevant, say in one of these tabs, like the trunk page, let's say we say there are caterpillars present on that trunk. What you'll see is that when we modify any of these fields and we come back here, that there's a little X under the trunk tab. That corresponds to the X under trunk for that particular visit. This allows us in a very quick way to have a one-shot glance at what's gone on with this tree over time. Because I can later come and say, well, when was it that we found insects on the trunk? And I can see that X jump to that visit, then jump to that tab. And that prevents me from having to jump through all the tabs just to see if there was something in there. Now, in addition to the tree part tabs here, those 4 there, we also have certain, we call them applications. And these can be pretty handy for consulting arborists. We have the weakness and risk tab, and that includes tree risk assessments. And we can do this in multiple ways. The most popular nowadays is the track system. That's the newish ISA system that is really quite involved. And we have secured the rights from the ISA to use their entire level 2 form here. So you'll find every single field with every single relevant value list in all of these tabs. And ultimately you get to the risk condition tab. We can add a risk condition, and this will calculate the risk condition based on the matrix values that you enter. Here we've just created a high risk rating. And we can even, as we'll show in a bit, we can even map which trees have which risk ratings. And this is fairly well automated. When we choose the species for this tree, it will automatically choose the Latin name, or if we choose from the Latin name, it will choose the common name. And when that happens, it pulls in all of the values for your ISA region into these things, such as weakness and risk assessments, as well as appraisals. That's what I'm going to jump to next. Here on the appraisal tab, we have both the trunk formula method and the replacement cost method. If this were a tree that was relevant to this ISA region, a bunch of these fields would be automatically filled out as soon as I selected a species. Things like installation cost, unit tree cost. There are some things we have to fill out, like the location rating is a product of these 3 fields. We make it pretty easy to fill those out. You have, of course, the condition rating worksheet for an appraisal. You can go and fill out all those tabs, or you can even do a quick and dirty short circuiting of that by just typing in a percentage and then get your value really quickly as an approximation. And then we also have PHC, plant healthcare, integrated pest management, things where we can keep records of treatments. This leads to a one-touch report that can go to your state for chemical usage as well. And then we also have conflicts, and we can keep track of conflicts as iTree does, which is just a pretty simplistic yes or no, or we can do a more sophisticated showing of the distance of what is being conflicted. For instance, power lines might be 9 feet from the crown, and then later we can do an analysis, say several years later, to suggest, well, some of these trees, their crown radius may have increased 9 feet, so maybe at this point in time we should go back and look at those trees. The system is designed so that you can run those reports and then communicate with your client, and that will generate business because you are prophylactically going to the client saying, here's something you probably should worry about now, and that's going to save them money because you're going to be getting ahead of some of these issues. So a quick look at how we would locate these trees. There's 2 ways to do it, really. When we first create a new tree, I'm going to go ahead and just press this plus button. Choose a species, and let's say a DBH, a beech tree. And we can enter any number of things or not enter things. But of course, one of the critical things we'll want to do is locate this as a latitude and longitude. The simple way is, if I were showing this to you on an iPad, there would be a button right here that says GPS locate. Just press it, takes the value from the GPS, and sticks it in here. More accurately, however, we have touch locate. And this will open up our location and allow us to go ahead and just click on a tree. And now it has calculated that latitude and longitude based on the pixel we selected on the map. And what we find is that typically with arborists, even with their big calloused fingers, they can get within 2 or 3 feet accuracy on the ground based on the pixel that they touch, which is a fair distance more accurate than a GPS, which typically has an error of about 15 feet. So that's a very handy way of handling mapping. You'll see that it also automatically looks up the address. So as soon as you have a GPS point, it goes, if you have web access, it will go and look up the address and put it into a field. So this is fantastic for large inventories. So that's the basic data entry side of things. Importantly, consulting arborists are often called on to make recommendations as to what should be done for a tree. And to do so, they would use this service box here. Here we would click on a new service, and we might select from a set of values that we've set up beforehand. And this, of course, is different from arborist to arborist. So this might be, say, a crown thinning. And we might take a picture of where it needs to happen. We might put in some notes. And this can be handy both for the proposal that will go to a client and also for someone who's executing this once the client approves. And in some ways, we can customize this so that you could have one set of notes that would be on the proposal and a different set of notes that would go to the person executing that task. And we can even have a more menu here where we enter in, here's an example of that. Here's the client comments, putting in some gibberish there, and then instructions for the person doing it, put in some more gibberish there. And this can get quite complicated. All of these fields can be customized, additional fields added in. Ultimately, this can be put into a proposal, and that can be done pretty instantaneously right there from the field. I can go to the location screen, say put all my tasks into a proposal. We just have that one we created. And here it's going to go ahead and create a document. Says approved no. If I click on it, I can go ahead and output the proposal. I'm just going to go ahead and put it into an email. So it's now creating a document. It's a PDF that's been inserted into an email that I can then go ahead and send directly to the client. So that's and here's that email. I'm going to double click on the PDF. And here it is with my gibberish notes and a map and boilerplate. And that's pretty simple. So right there from the field, you can send to them. We can print it out. Oftentimes, if you're consulting with a client standing with you, you can just click on the approved button here, and it provides them literally a place where they can use their finger to sign to approve. In that way, that work can be approved. And consulting arborists will go through different levels of stages here. Some consulting arborists will just say, here's your situation, and leave it at that. Some will make specific recommendations. Some will be associated with tree service firms where they're making recommendations and trying to get approvals so that their service team can come out later and handle that. I should note that we have another version of the software that we call our enterprise version. And that's for large tree service firms that do all of what we're doing here and then carries on toward more of the tree service work with the scheduling of multiple teams and quite a bit more detail and financials and things of that sort, which is more appropriate for a company of at least 4 or 5 or 6 independent teams running around at once doing lots of work. That's typically a firm with 40 or 50 or more employees. So the last thing we want to show is some of the reports that we can produce with this data. I can go ahead and produce tree risk assessment reports, appraisal reports. A common one is inventory reports. So I might select this one and it will show an example of an inventory report. This one is just opening it up in PDF. It just produced that from the data in the database. It's taking a couple trees per page, and you'll see here it's the basic information about the tree and 4 pictures of that particular tree, and it goes on These can be hundreds of pages long, and we have different inventory formats. Some may have as many as 10 or 15 trees per page. Some may be multiple pages per tree. Really depends on what you're looking for. We have a good set of pretty complete examples that we can draw from here. We also can customize to any particular report that you already have or one that you'd like to make up. So that's the quick version of urban forest metrics. Please be sure to look below to see some of the other demonstrations we've put together for things like the enterprise version, urban forest metrics for tree service firms, urban forest metrics for municipalities. A lot of it is the same functionality, but with different use cases. So it's useful to kind of see those specific applications. And as ever, if you have questions, you'd like to have a demonstration over the web, or you'd like to contact us to talk more about getting urban forest metrics, just go ahead and down below you'll find contact information. Thank you very much.